sons and daughters.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Aurora Smedley podcast, where I speak with you about what the world needs to hear. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about energy reading. I'm going to be talking about auric field reading and how anyone can do it, and how you have access to this information, which can support you in anything that you're doing, communication, friendship, and whatnot, because this gives you greater insight into what's going on for somebody, regardless of what they're actually saying. And what this means as well for protecting yourself, what this can mean for knowing when to interact with somebody versus not interact with somebody, that there is rich nonverbal information that you can receive from various people simply based on the energetic information that you can directly read from them. So I just want to add one caveat. I'm just one person. Different people will experience energy in a different way. People will read energy in different ways. I'm just one person with one experience of how I do my readings. So this podcast is essentially energy reading for dummies. And this is because I feel that everybody can do this. And so I want to demonstrate to you how you can read energy and how this can support your life so that you can create better relationships with people, so that you can ensure your own well-being by avoiding people that do not have your best interests at heart, and to be able to support people's development and communicate with them better by understanding what their energetic field is conveying. So the most basic level of energy reading is feeling somebody's vibe. If you can feel somebody's vibe, you are reading energy. Okay? So the simplest form of energy reading is, does somebody have a good vibe or a bad vibe? Okay? So this is what I mean by everybody does energy reading. That is energy reading. Because where do you get that information from? How do you know that they have a good vibe or a bad vibe, right? You could tell blindfolded if somebody has a good vibe or a bad vibe, right? Before you even speak to them. Two people could have the same expression on their face, but one person might be giving you a good vibe and the other person might be giving you a bad vibe. So this is the most basic form of energy reading, is understanding whether somebody has a good vibe or a bad vibe. So if you want to begin your energy reading process, just start by observing people walking by, perhaps at a mall or something, right? And notice if they have a good vibe or a bad vibe. If they have a good vibe, what does that feel like in your body? Where do you notice in your body that it's a good vibe? Where in your body do you notice that it's a bad vibe? Okay? So this is the most simple form of energy reading, is simply good or bad. Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Right? But when we get to more elaborate forms of energy reading, we are simply taking that same information and looking at it at a more nuanced level. You start looking at people's energy with more granularity than just, is it a good vibe or is it a bad vibe? So that's the first step, right? Knowing whether somebody has a good vibe or a bad vibe. The next step in learning energy reading is beginning your internal relationship of your own feeling within yourself and your own body. I hinted at this already, but energy reading does not happen on a cognitive level. It happens on a felt level. It happens on an intuitive level. It happens on I just randomly heard something or I randomly saw something level. So energy reading happens at the level of subconscious, not conscious. It happens on the level of feeling. It happens on the level of body, not on the level of cognitive language. Right? So in fact, the cognitive thinking that you have in your mind usually blocks the direct access that you have to this subconscious energetic knowledge. So the first step, like I said, is does somebody have a good vibe or a bad vibe? The next step is being able to feel within yourself how you feel because of this person's good vibe or this person's bad vibe. So when somebody has a good vibe or a bad vibe and you notice this, notice where you feel it. Do you feel it in your gut? Do you feel it in your heart? Do you feel it in your throat? Do you just get an intuitive feeling? Do you hear it in words? Do you see it as an image? Or do you just know? So typically people will either hear truth, they will see truth, they will feel truth, or they will know truth. Right. So I want to point out as well that a lot of people act like being psychic is this weird thing, but actually the word clairvoyant means seeing clearly. It doesn't mean seeing crazy stuff. It means seeing clearly. And this is actually why people that are psychic are typically seen as being very disorienting for other people, is because when they look at people, it pierces through the veil. And you have the sense that this person can see your soul, because likely they can. They can see past all of this physical bullshit that people see as real. And they can see to the heart of what you are and what's really going on for you, regardless of whether you have said it. And so this is what clairvoyance is. But like I said, this is something that everybody has access to. That clairvoyance is something where you have this feeling in your own body, and once again, you begin this process of being able to communicate with your own body, and your body will start to reveal to you information about these people. So you start to see good versus bad. And then now you start to have a connection with your own body. Where are you getting the information of whether this person has a good vibe or a bad vibe? You feel it. You just feel it. You just know it, right? You feel it in your gut. You feel a constriction in your throat. You feel a constriction in your gut. Maybe you feel some kind of tightness around them if they feel bad. Maybe you feel some kind of expansion if they feel good. Maybe you feel some kind of tingling in some part of your body, some kind of heat, some kind of cold, some kind of, what sensations are you feeling? And as you read these sensations, you will be able to collect more information about this person. So now the third step is we begin to look at the person's energy with greater granularity, okay? There's many different ways that we can assess this granularity, but I'm going to name some characteristics that I've seen in people's energy fields that can begin to provide certain kinds of information about this person, right? So like I said, the most basic level is good or bad. But I'd say the next level is where on their body is the bad vibe coming from? Where is the vibe coming from? Is it coming from their shoulder? Is it coming from their heart? Is it coming from their head? Is it coming from their gut? Is it coming from somewhere behind them? Does it feel that there is something that is attached to them which is causing the bad vibe? Or is the vibe coming from them? Are there images that you associate with this bad vibe? So this is where we start to get to greater granularity with quote unquote energy reading. We are simply zooming in. We are simply starting to get a higher resolution image of what we already knew with the good vibe versus bad vibe thing. If the good vibe is happening, is it radiating from their heart? Is it radiating from their eyes? Is it radiating from their whole being? Where is the good vibe coming from? Okay. So I've spoken about location. Where on the body is the vibe coming from? But the next thing I'll speak to is what is the color of that vibe? A lot of people think about color in aura readings, right? And so you might see it. You might know it. You might feel that the color is something, right? But typically the first color that comes to mind in relation to that person is the correct color. As soon as you start to become over cognizant of what the color is, that's when you're actually starting to block your seeing of that color. So the next thing would be the size of the person's auric field. So some people feel that their aura is totally expanded. Some people's auras feel artificially overexpanded. Some people's auras feel small. Some people's auras feel weak. Some people's auras feel collapsed, right? Some people's auras have various remnants in them. Okay, so seeing how big the person's aura is, the size of the aura, the strength of the aura, the color of the aura, this is starting to provide other kinds of information about this individual. Usually people with large auras are more likely to be healthy, are more likely to be powerful individuals, are more likely to be individuals that quote unquote take up space. Right? Whereas some people have auras that seem a little bit more respectful, that have auras that aren't as imposing. And other people have auras that are collapsed or that are shrunken because they are not fully comfortable in who they are, or they're hiding who they are, or perhaps they've had something difficult or traumatic happen that has caused their aura to collapse or shrink. Perhaps they're dealing with a health issue, right? So I've spoken to color, I've spoken to size, I've spoken to where on the body is the good or the bad vibe coming from. The next thing that I want to speak to is other characteristics like texture and temperature. So when you are sensing that there's a good or bad vibe about somebody, you might get information about this. I would say it's more likely with the bad vibe. And the reason why is that everybody at their core has a good vibe. The core of our essence is always the essence of God. And so this, when you remove the crap, then the person has a good vibe, right? So usually when you sense something from a certain location, it's actually spiritual remnants, it's spiritual baggage, it's energetic baggage, it's traumas. And these are the things that create a distortion and that therefore create a quote unquote bad vibe. Okay, so these kinds of things you're going to, you might feel into them with your energy body. Okay, so when you just connect with those things, and when you connect with those things, you might see an image. You might feel a sensation. You might feel something in some part of your body. You might know something. You might have a sense that there's a certain texture to it. There's a certain texture to that energy. There's a certain size to that energy. There's a certain color to that energy. There's a certain temperature to that energy. Is that energy hot or cold? Does it feel full or empty? Is there a certain image that you have in your mind? Like when you feel that aspect of their energy, do you feel like a porcupine? Or do you feel like a spine or something? Or do you feel something else? What is going on? And just feel into that. And that's where we start to get into interesting information that you're collecting about that person's energy field. So now I've discussed in 4 steps, essentially, how to read energy. Now that I've kind of discussed this process, I'm going to point to how this can be supportive of you in your life. So the reason why this is supportive is that, first of all, it gives you more granularity to this idea of, does somebody have a good vibe or a bad vibe, and what the source of this might be. Sometimes it's illness, sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's something where they have a karmic debt that hasn't been paid. So this kind of information can begin to show you who you should trust and who you might not want to trust. So the good vibe versus the bad vibe thing is a great indicator of who you should trust versus who you should not trust, who you might want to have in your life versus who you might not have in your life. Right? So through this, you can discern with a greater sense of sureness and a greater sense of awareness who belongs in your life, who is going to treat you well, who is bringing blessings into your life versus who is going to be destructive in your life, right? So this is the first, probably most basic application of energy reading. The next application of energy reading can also be the converse. If you feel especially drawn to somebody, if you just know if there's a certain kind of energetic resonance that you feel with this person, then this means that you should spend time with them. And even if you don't know why, from a psychological perspective, if you are mutually drawn together, it means that your souls have some kind of information to communicate to each other, which will be of service to both of you. This kind of mutual draw can also be a telling factor as well. The next aspect of this that I will point out as well is that sometimes there will be transients in somebody's energy body. You can also read it through body language, etc. But there might be transients in a person's energy body when they are lying to you, when they are going through something. There might be longer transients. This enables you to be a better friend, a better communicator, because then you have a better understanding of what might be going on. Then you might be able to directly address the heart of the issue rather than what they're saying is the issue. Because sometimes people will say one thing, that something else is going on, or that they're fine, but you can tell by reading their energy body that there's something amiss, that there's something that they're going through, that there's something that they're not sharing. And by addressing this gently, this can open up communication. This can help you in your development of your relationship with that person. This could also be relevant in sales as far as reading between the lines to understand what is really going on for that person versus what you think is going on for that person. So the next and the final aspect that I'm going to point out as well is how this can be beneficial in healing practices, for example, for doctors, for nurses, etc. Because when you are able to understand what kind of quote unquote negative energy is in somebody's body, then it gives hints as to what the spiritual lessons are that this person needs to learn in order for them to overcome the health issue that they're currently experiencing or the life issue that they're currently experiencing. So this provides information that can contribute to their elevation and the curing of various ailments, illnesses, and problems in their life. I've given you a pretty thorough introductory lesson into how to begin energy reading, how to learn that process through observing people and being attentive to the details of what is happening in their quote unquote vibe. And I've also spoken to the application of this understanding and how this can be beneficial for you in your life. And so I really hope that this has been supportive for you, and I look forward to speaking with you in the next podcast.